Whispers of the extinct. Captain Teller Zora stared at the sensor readings, mandibles clicking in agitation. The data couldn't be right. For the third consecutive patrol, the anomalous signals had appeared at exactly the same coordinates, just beyond the Veiled Nebula, at the very edge of Galactic Coalition space. "Run the analysis again," she ordered, six eyes narrowing at the holographic display floating before her. Lieutenant Crab's antennae twitched nervously. "Captain, we've already run it 7 times. The signature doesn't match any known species in the Coalition database." The bridge of the GCS Vigilance hummed with tension. As a Sorillian patrol vessel, the Vigilance was responsible for maintaining the security of this sector. A normally uneventful assignment that had suddenly become the most interesting posting in the quadrant. Could it be a sensor malfunction? Asked Navigation Officer Pell, his translucent appendages rippling with uncertainty. "Not likely," replied Chief Engineer Droll, the stocky Carudian's metallic scales glinting under the bridge lights. "I've calibrated the sensors myself. Something's out there, and it's deliberately staying just beyond standard scanning range." Zora's upper arms crossed while her lower ones tapped a pattern on the command console. The mystery had consumed her thoughts for weeks. The Veiled Nebula was largely considered the boundary of civilized space, with nothing beyond but unmapped stars and cosmic radiation. No known species had ventured that far in generations. No known species except. Send the data to Coalition Central, she decided. Flag it as a potential security concern. Priority 2. Only Priority 2. Questioned Security Officer Malin, the Vraxi's luminescent skin pulsing with surprise. Zora fixed him with her multifaceted gaze. "Because if it were what I'm thinking, it would be Priority 0, and I don't want to cause a system-wide panic over sensor ghosts." The unspoken thought hung in the recycled air of the bridge. Humans. The species that had nearly brought the Coalition to its knees 3 centuries ago before being eradicated in the Containment War. The species whose very mention still caused unease among the elder races. "Set course for the anomaly," Zora commanded, settling into her chair. "Let's see what's lurking at the edge of our territory." "Captain," Malin objected, "Coalition protocols state that unknown contacts should be reported and avoided until—" "I'm aware of the protocols, officer," Zora interrupted. "But protocols also state that border security vessels must investigate potential threats. We'll maintain safe distance and observe only." As the Vigilance altered course, heading toward the mysterious signal, Zora accessed the historical archives through her neural interface. The information on humans was limited. Much had been purged after the Containment War, but what remained painted a disturbing picture. Humans, bipedal mammals from Earth, Sol system, remarkable adaptability. Dangerous levels of technological advancement within short evolutionary timeframe. Expansion rate exponential. Containment action authorized by Coalition Council, year 7249. Status: extinct. Below the official entry was a personal note from her great-grandfather, who had served in the final campaigns. "They fought like nothing we'd ever seen. Not just their soldiers, every one of them. When we thought we'd broken them, they adapted. When we destroyed their fleets, they built more from scrap. Their homeworld was reduced to ash, and still they kept fighting. The official records say we eliminated them all, but sometimes I wonder." Zora closed the file, a chill working its way through her exoskeleton. Surely it couldn't be humans. The Coalition had been thorough. Earth destroyed, colonies systematically cleansed, the few survivors hunted across the stars until none remained. Yet something about these anomalous readings triggered instincts older than rational thought. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," announced Lieutenant Crab. "Maintaining position at 5 light minutes from the anomaly." "Active scans," Zora ordered. The holographic display shifted, rendering a 3-dimensional image of the region. At first, there was nothing but the swirling gases of the nebula's edge. But then the computer enhanced a tiny object, a ship barely larger than a shuttle. "Configuration unknown," reported Malin, his skin now pulsing rapid patterns of concern. Design doesn't match any coalition registry. It's old, observed engineer Droll, leaning forward to study the image. Look at the propulsion signature. Chemical thrusters with some kind of primitive gravitic assistance. No species in the coalition has used that combination in at least 500 cycles. Zora felt her heart accelerate. Are they scanning us? Difficult to tell, Malin replied. Their emissions are unusual. If they are scanning, it's using methods I'd never encountered. They're moving, interrupted Navigator Pell. Changing course too. They're heading directly for us. Defensive posture, Zora commanded. Shields up, weapons on standby only. Let's not start an incident. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, the vigilance shifting into a defensive configuration. On the holographic display, the unknown vessel continued its approach, unhurried but deliberate. Captain, Communications Officer Talia announced, her crystalline form glittering with excitement. We're receiving a transmission from the vessel. It's in standard coalition frequency, but the encoding is archaic. Zora's mandibles clicked rapidly, a cerulean expression of surprise. Can you decrypt it? Working on it, Talia replied, crystal facets realigning as she processed the signal. It's text only. Simple binary code. She paused, her crystalline form momentarily losing coherence in shock. Captain, it's in human language. The bridge fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the ship's systems seemed to fade as the implications settled over the crew. Display it, Zora ordered, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her thoughts. The holographic display shifted, text appearing in the air before them. Greetings, GCS Vigilance. Peace fueled huontt intended. Request communication protocols. EAR the reconnaissance vessel PATHINDR. Impossible, whispered Malin. Humans are extinct. This must be some kind of deception. By whom? Challenged Troll. What species would impersonate a race universally feared and hated throughout the coalition? Zora stared at the message, her ancestors' words echoing in her mind. Sometimes I wonder. Prepare a response, she decided. Basic identification and inquiry only. No tactical information. As Talia crafted the message, Lieutenant Krav approached the command chair, voice lowered. Captain, we should inform Coalition Central immediately. This violates at least 7 security protocols and cause a panic based on a single unverified contact. Zora countered. I want more information before we potentially mobilize half the defense fleet. The truth was more complex. Something about this encounter felt personal to Zora. Her family's connection to the containment war, her great-grandfather's lingering doubts, they had shaped her understanding of coalition history in ways she rarely acknowledged. Message sent, announced Talia. Response incoming. That was fast. The display updated with a new message. Thank you for responding, Captain Zorage. We represent the remnants of humanity. We come with urgent information AFECTING all CNTINT life in this CCC tour. Request direct communication. How do they know your name? Malin demanded, skin pulsing with alarm patterns. Our identification beacon, Droll explained. Standard coalition format includes vessel name and commanding officer. Zora's mind raced. Policy dictated immediate withdrawal and reporting. Logic suggested a trap. But instinct, the same instinct that had earned her this command, pushed her toward a different course. Open a visual channel, she ordered. Captain, objected Malin. Coalition protocols explicitly forbid. I am aware of the protocols, officer, Zora interrupted firmly. I take full responsibility. Open the channel. The holographic display shifted again, and for the first time in 3 centuries, a member of the Galactic Coalition looked upon the face of a human. The creature was disconcertingly simple in appearance compared to most coalition species, bipedal with only 2 eyes, no visible exoskeleton, and covered in some kind of synthetic material. Its skin was a deep brown, head adorned with tightly coiled black fibers, and its features arranged in a way that Zora found strangely readable despite the alien physiology. "Captain Zora," the human said, its voice deeper than she had expected. "I am Commander Marcus Chen of the Earth Reconnaissance Vessel Pathfinder. Thank you for accepting communication." For a moment, Zora was speechless. Historical archives contained images of humans, of course, but seeing one alive, moving, speaking, observing her in return, was entirely different. "This is impossible," she finally managed. "Your species was eradicated in the containment war 3 centuries ago." The human's facial features shifted subtly, an expression Zora couldn't interpret. "Not eradicated, Captain. Driven into exile. While your coalition celebrated our extinction, the survivors of humanity fled beyond the reaches of your maps. We've been watching from the shadows, rebuilding, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Zora asked, tension evident in her mandible clicks. "Not for revenge, if that's what you're thinking," Chen replied, "though there were many among us who desired it. No, we've been waiting for something far more important." The human leaned closer to the camera. "We've detected something approaching from the galactic rim, something that threatens all sentient life, including what remains of humanity." Skepticism radiated from every member of the bridge crew. Malin's skin had shifted to patterns indicating disbelief, while Droll's metallic scales had flattened in suspicion. "A convenient claim," Zora noted. "You appear after centuries of absence, warning of a greater threat that conveniently requires our cooperation." Chen's expression changed again, this time to something Zora recognized from her historical studies, a human smile, but one without humor. "Your skepticism is natural, Captain. I would feel the same in your position. But we didn't survive extinction by being fools. We know how the Coalition views humanity. We know that by revealing ourselves, we risk finishing what your ancestors started." The human tapped something off-screen, and the transmission split to show a series of stellar charts and energy readings. "These are gravimetric distortions we've been tracking for the past 7 years. They're moving toward Coalition space at approximately 1 light-year per standard month. We call them the Void Eaters." Despite herself, Zora was intrigued. The data appeared authentic, showing massive gravitational anomalies moving in patterns that suggested intelligence rather than natural phenomena. "Why come to us?" she asked. "If you've survived in secret for centuries, why reveal yourselves now?" "Because against what's coming, neither of us can survive alone," Chen answered simply. "Humanity remembers the containment war, Captain. We haven't forgotten what the Coalition did to us, but we've evolved beyond vengeance." The human's gaze seemed to intensify, even through the transmission. "In 16 days, a fleet of human vessels will arrive at these coordinates, not as invaders, but as messengers and potential allies. Whether the Coalition chooses to listen may determine the survival of all our species." Before Zora could respond, the transmission ended abruptly. On the tactical display, the small human vessel was already retreating, its unusual propulsion signature leaving a trail unlike anything in Coalition records. "Orders, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Krav, antennae rigid with tension. Zora stared at the empty space where the human's face had been, aware that she stood at a pivotal moment in Coalition history. Standard procedure was clear: report the contact, classify the humans as hostile, and mobilize defensive forces. Instead, she made a decision that would forever alter the course of galactic events. "Set course for Coalition Central," she commanded. "Priority routing, and prepare all sensor data for transmission, unredacted and unfiltered." As the Vigilance turned toward the heart of Coalition space, Zora accessed her personal log. First contact with human vessel established. Despite 3 centuries of accepted history, humanity appears to have survived the containment war. They claim to come in peace, bearing warnings of a greater threat. Coalition dogma says this must be a deception, yet I find myself questioning that assumption. In 16 days, they say a human fleet will arrive. The coalition must decide whether to meet them with weapons or words. My recommendation will be to listen, at least before we consider firing. Zora closed the log entry, gazing at the stars streaking past as the vigilance accelerated to FTL speeds. Somewhere out there, the descendants of a species that should have been extinct were approaching coalition space after centuries of exile. And beyond them, if the human was to be believed, something worse was following. The question that troubled her most wasn't whether humans could be trusted. It was whether the coalition, with its rigid hierarchies and ancient prejudices, could adapt quickly enough to face what was coming. Humans had survived extinction through adaptability. Would the coalition's resistance to change prove to be its undoing? Only time would tell. 16 days of time, to be precise. The Harbinger's return. 16 days after the encounter with the human scout ship, the Coalition's Central Defense Committee convened an emergency session. The massive chamber, carved from a single asteroid at the heart of Coalition space, hummed with tension as representatives from 27 species argued over the appropriate response to Captain Zora's report. High Admiral Vitrix, the ancient Vraxi who commanded the Coalition Defense Fleet, slammed his luminescent appendage against the central podium. Enough debate. The evidence is clear. These creatures claiming to be humans are either imposters or, worse, survivors who have hidden for centuries, building their strength. Either scenario represents a critical threat to Coalition security. Zora stood at attention before the committee, her exoskeleton polished to a formal sheen. For over 6 hours, she had endured questioning, skepticism, and outright hostility from various committee members. Only a few had shown any interest in the warning about the Void Eaters. With respect, Admiral, she responded, mandibles carefully controlled to show deference. The human vessel made no aggressive moves. Their warning is obviously a diversion tactic, interrupted Councillor Maris, the Carudian representative. His metallic scales flashed with patterns of dismissal. Create a fictional threat, position themselves as saviors, and gain access to our systems. It's a strategy as old as interspecies conflict itself. Zora felt her patience wearing thin. The gravimetric anomalies in their data match disturbances our own long-range observatory at Nexus 7 has detected. These Void Eaters may be real. The committee chamber fell momentarily silent as members processed this information. It was Ambassador Lorne, representing the crystalline Thalax, who finally spoke, her form refracting light in patterns of contemplation. If humans truly survived the containment war, how? Where have they been hiding? Our ancestors were thorough in their eradication efforts. Before Zora could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. Holographic displays materialized around the committee table, showing real-time sensor data from the Coalition's outer defense perimeter. Multiple vessels detected emerging from hyperspace near the Veiled Nebula, announced the automated security system. Configuration unknown. Numbers 37 and increasing. The committee erupted into chaos. Admiral Vitrix began shouting orders to his subordinates, while various representatives demanded immediate evacuation protocols. Zora remained focused on the tactical display, watching as more ships appeared. Dozens, then hundreds. They're jamming long-range communications, reported a security officer, his chitinous faceplates clicking with alarm. Defense platforms are attempting to compensate. Suddenly, the holographic displays flickered and changed. Instead of sensor data, they now showed the image of a human, different from Commander Chen. This one older, with pale skin and silver hair cropped close to the scalp. Attention, Galactic Coalition Central Authority, the human began, voice deep and measured. I am Admiral Elizabeth Reyes of the Earth Fleet. We come in peace, bearing critical information about a threat approaching from the galactic rim. We request a diplomatic meeting with coalition leadership. The chamber fell silent again, all eyes fixed on the apparition of a species that should have been consigned to historical archives. "How are they broadcasting directly into our secure chamber?" whispered one of the junior counselors. "Their technological capabilities appear to have advanced during their absence," Zora observed dryly. Admiral V-Trix stepped forward, his luminescence pulsing with anger. "This is High Admiral V-Trix of the Coalition Defense Fleet. Your presence in Coalition space is a violation of the containment protocols established after the systematic genocide of our species." Admiral Reyes interrupted, her expression unchanged. "We're well aware of Coalition law, Admiral. We're also aware that in approximately 73 days, the first wave of entities we call Void Eaters will reach your outer colonies. When that happens, you'll need our help." V-Trix's skin flashed indignantly. "Coalition space is defended by the most advanced fleet in the known galaxy. We require no assistance from the species you failed to exterminate." Rice finished. Her calm was unnerving. "Your pride is noted, Admiral, but this isn't about ancient grudges. This is about survival, yours and ours." The human's image expanded, displaying star charts and gravitational readings that matched those provided by the Pathfinder. Additional data streamed alongside, simulations showing entire planetary systems collapsing under some unseen force. "The Void Eaters consume energy at the quantum level," Rice explained. "They've already destroyed 3 of our outer settlements. Conventional weapons are ineffective. They cannot be reasoned with or deterred. They simply consume." Ambassador Lorne stepped forward, her crystalline form refracting the holographic light. "If this threat is real, why would you warn those who once sought your extinction? Revenge would dictate allowing us to face this threat unprepared." For the first time, Admiral Rice's expression changed. Something subtle that Zora recognized from her studies as sadness. "Because despite everything, we remember what we were before the war. Humanity once believed in cooperation, in the idea that different species could build something greater together than apart. The Coalition betrayed that ideal when they decided we were too dangerous to exist." The Admiral's gaze seemed to sweep across the committee members. "We've had 3 centuries to nurse our hatred, to plot revenge. Instead, we chose to rebuild, to preserve what made humanity worth saving in the first place. Now we're choosing to warn you, because extinction, any extinction, diminishes all sentient life." Counselor Maris snorted, metallic scales flashing skeptically. Noble words from a species that was expanding aggressively into Coalition space before the containment. "Is that what your histories teach?" Rides asked, one eyebrow raised. "That humans were the aggressors. Interesting how victors reshaped the past." Before the conversation could devolve further, Zora stepped forward. "Admiral Reyes, I am Captain Teller Zora of the GCS Vigilance. I encountered your scout ship 16 days ago. What proof can you offer that these Void Eaters exist, beyond the data you've provided?" The human admiral's attention shifted to Zora, her expression softening slightly. "Captain Zora, Commander Chen spoke highly of your willingness to communicate rather than immediately firing upon the Pathfinder. As for proof," she manipulated something off-screen, and the holographic display shifted to show a recording. It depicted a star system with 3 habitable planets, teeming with structures that Zora assumed were human settlements. Then something entered the system, not ships, but distortions in space itself, like tears in the fabric of reality. Where they passed, matter simply ceased to exist. The recording showed human vessels fighting desperately, their weapons seemingly passing through the distortions without effect. "This was New Horizon Colony, 17 months ago," Rice said quietly. "Population 6 million. Within 3 days, the entire system was gone, not destroyed, but consumed. The Void Eaters converted all matter and energy into something our scientists still don't fully understand." The recording ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Even the most skeptical committee members appeared shaken. We've developed technologies that can temporarily disrupt their feeding process, Rice continued. Enough to slow them down, but not stop them completely. With coalition resources and knowledge combined with ours, we might develop a permanent solution. Admiral Vitrix's luminescence had dimmed to a troubled glow. If what you show us is genuine, why have our long-range sensors detected only minor gravitational anomalies? Because you're looking for natural phenomena or conventional ships, Rise explained. The Void Eaters exist partially in dimensions beyond normal spacetime. We only learned to detect them properly after losing 2 colonies. Ambassador Lorne's crystalline form shimmered with decision patterns. The Coalition requires time to verify your claims and consider your offer of assistance. Of course, Rise nodded. Our fleet will maintain position at the current coordinates. As a gesture of good faith, I'm transmitting comprehensive technical data on Void Eater detection methods. Implement them quickly. You have less time than you think. The transmission ended, leaving the committee chamber in uneasy silence. After several moments, Admiral Vitrix turned to Zora. Captain, your encounter with the human scout has placed you in a unique position. The committee requires your assessment. Do you believe these humans are sincere? Zora considered carefully before answering. Her career, possibly her life, depended on her response. The safe answer would align with coalition prejudice. Humans were deceivers, manipulators, too dangerous to trust. Instead, she chose truth. I believe the threat is real, she stated firmly. The gravimetric data matches our own observations. As for the humans, she paused, organizing her thoughts. 3 centuries ago, we tried to exterminate them because we feared their potential. They've had 300 years to evolve beyond our understanding, yet they've chosen to warn us rather than strike when we're vulnerable. That suggests either remarkable restraint or genuine concern for all sentient life. The committee exchanged glances, various species communicating in their native expressions of uncertainty. Finally, Ambassador Lorne spoke. The Thalax have maintained the historical archives since before the Containment War. There are inconsistencies in the official narrative that have troubled our historians for generations. She activated her personal data interface, projecting historical documents into the chamber. The initial conflicts with humans were primarily resource disputes in shared border regions. Diplomatic solutions were being negotiated when the Coalition Council, led by species now extinct themselves, voted for containment action. The justification was human reproductive and technological expansion rates, projected to overtake multiple coalition species within 2 centuries. Admiral Vitrix's luminescence pulsed with discomfort. The decision was made by our ancestors based on the information available at that time. Information that appears to have been selectively presented, Ambassador Lorne countered. The Thalax representative of that era registered a formal protest, noting that human diplomatic overtures were rejected without consideration. Captain Zora watched the committee grapple with this revelation. For most coalition species, the Containment War was ancient history, a regrettable but necessary action to preserve galactic stability. Few had questioned the narrative in centuries. Regardless of historical disputes, Counselor Maris interjected, we face an immediate decision. Do we engage with these humans diplomatically or treat their presence as a security threat? Before anyone could respond, the emergency alert system activated again. Gravimetric anomaly detected in the Tyrannus system, announced the automated voice. Pattern matches human warning data with 97.8% correlation. The holographic display shifted to show the Tyrannus system, an outer coalition territory with 1 inhabited world and several mining outposts. A distortion was visible at the system's edge, similar to those in the human recording. Tyrannus reports unusual energy fluctuations, continued the system. Communication becoming unstable. Mining Station Epsilon has gone silent. The committee watched in horror as the distortion expanded, engulfing an uninhabited planet in the system. The planet didn't explode or break apart. It simply faded from existence, as though being erased from reality itself. By the first light, whispered Ambassador Lorne, her crystalline form clouding with fear patterns. Admiral V-Trix turned to his subordinates. Dispatch the 7th Fleet to Tyrannus immediately. Full combat readiness. Zora stepped forward. Admiral, conventional weapons were ineffective in the human recording. Perhaps we should accept human assistance. V-Trix finished, his luminescence pulsing with conflicted patterns. 3 centuries of doctrine cannot be discarded in a moment, Captain, even in a crisis. With respect, Admiral, Zora pressed. Doctrine won't matter if we're all consumed by these void eaters. The emergency system interrupted again. Tyrannus colony reports multiple gravitational distortions approaching the main settlement. Estimated population, 8 million. Evacuation protocols initiated, but time to completion exceeds estimated arrival of anomalies. The committee fell silent, the magnitude of the threat becoming undeniable. 8 million lives hung in the balance, with the coalition's most powerful fleet likely to arrive too late to help. Finally, Admiral V-Trix made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered, his luminescence steady with resolve. Inform Admiral Reyes that the coalition requests their assistance at Tyrannus. As the communication was sent, Zora caught the eye of Ambassador Lorne, who inclined her crystalline form slightly, a gesture of approval. Perhaps, Zora thought, 3 centuries of mistrust might begin to heal in the crucible of shared danger. Hours later, reports reached Coalition Central. Human vessels had arrived at Tyrannus ahead of the 7th Fleet, deploying technologies that disrupted the Void Eater's consumption process. Millions of lives had been saved, though at a cost. 3 human ships destroyed, their crews sacrificed to buy evacuation time. When Admiral Reyes contacted the committee again, her expression was grim but determined. This was only the beginning, she warned. The Void Eaters we encountered at Tyrannus were merely scouts. More are coming, many more. As the human spoke, Captain Zora realized that history was being rewritten before her eyes. Humanity, long believed extinct, had returned not as conquerors seeking vengeance, but as harbingers of a greater threat. And perhaps, if ancient hatreds could be overcome, as saviors. The irony was not lost on her. The species the Coalition had once deemed too dangerous to exist might now be their only hope for survival. Alliance of necessity. The command center of Coalition Forward Base Epsilon 7 buzzed with activity as officers from both Coalition forces and the human fleet coordinated defensive preparations. Established on a moon orbiting the gas giant Typhon, the base had become the unlikely headquarters for the joint operation against the Void Eaters. Captain Zora studied the strategic display, her 6 eyes tracking the movements of the enemy. In the 2 months since the initial incursion at Tyrannus, the Void Eaters had consumed 3 uninhabited systems and attempted attacks on 5 Coalition colonies. Each time, the combined human Coalition forces had managed to evacuate the populations and deploy disruption technology, never defeating the entities, but preventing them from consuming inhabited worlds. The containment field is holding at Nexus 8, reported Lieutenant Krav, his antennae twitching with cautious optimism. Human disruption technology has extended the field's duration by 47%. And the civilian evacuation? Zora asked. Completed 6 hours ago, answered a human voice. Zora turned to find Commander Chen approaching the tactical table. The human looked tired. Their species required more rest than most Coalition members, a biological weakness that seemed at odds with their remarkable adaptability. Commander, Zora acknowledged with a formal mandible click. Your disruption fields continue to exceed expectations. Chen offered a small smile. Necessity is the mother of invention, Captain. When your species faces extinction twice in 3 centuries, you get creative. Over the past months, Zora had worked closely with the human commander, gradually developing what might cautiously be called respect. Chen was forthright where many Coalition officers were evasive, practical where others were bureaucratic. His different perspective had proven invaluable in planning operations against an enemy that defied conventional military doctrine. The Coalition Science Directorate has integrated your quantum resonance technology with our phase displacement shields, Zora informed him. Simulations suggest a 60% increase in effectiveness against Void Eater consumption patterns. Good. Chen nodded. We'll need every advantage for what's coming. He gestured to the strategic display, where a massive gravitational distortion was moving steadily toward Coalition space. Long-range sensors confirm it's the largest concentration we've seen yet. At least 300 distinct Void Eater signatures, moving as a coordinated swarm. The implications were clear. Previous encounters had involved no more than a dozen entities, dangerous, but manageable with evacuation protocols and disruption technology. A swarm of 300 would overwhelm their current defenses. The Coalition Defense Committee still believes this is an invasion fleet targeting specific systems, Zora noted, her tone conveying what she thought of that assessment. Chen's expression darkened. They're not an invasion, Captain. They're a force of nature that happens to be sentient. They don't want territory or resources. They want everything. The concept of leaving anything behind is foreign to them. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Admiral Vitrix, his luminescent form pulsing with agitation patterns. Captain Zora. Commander Chen, he acknowledged. The Defense Committee has reviewed your joint proposal for Operation Firebreak. I regret to inform you that it has been rejected. Zora's mandibles clicked in frustration. Operation Firebreak, a plan to use modified Coalition starlifters to create a barrier of disrupted space between the approaching swarm and the densely populated inner worlds, represented their best chance at establishing the defensible perimeter. On what grounds, Admiral? She asked, struggling to maintain professional composure. Resource allocation and technological concerns, Vitrix replied, though his luminescence patterns suggested embarrassment rather than conviction. The starlifters are critical infrastructure. Modifying them with experimental human technology presents unacceptable risks. More unacceptable than losing entire systems, Chen asked, his calm voice belying the intensity of his gaze. Vitrix's appendages rippled defensively. Commander, the committee acknowledges humanity's assistance thus far, but integration of your technology must follow proper protocols. The modification designs have not been sufficiently tested. We don't have time for your protocols. Chen interrupted, an unusual edge in his voice. The swarm will reach the Helios cluster in less than 14 days. 7 inhabited worlds, billions of lives. Your evacuation infrastructure can't possibly relocate that many in time. The committee is aware of the timeline. Vitrix responded stiffly. Alternative defensive measures are being considered. Zora exchanged a glance with Chen. They both knew what alternative measures meant, sacrificing the outer systems to buy time for the Coalition core worlds. Admiral, Zora said carefully, the historical archives contain detailed analyses of why the containment war against humanity ultimately failed despite overwhelming Coalition superiority. Do you know what factor was cited most frequently? Vitrix's luminescence dimmed with discomfort. This is hardly the time for a history lesson, Captain. Inability to adapt. Zora continued regardless. Humanity changed tactics constantly, improvised with available resources, abandoned doctrine when necessary. The Coalition forces adhered rigidly to established protocols and suffered devastating losses as a result. She gestured to the tactical display. We're making the same mistake again. But this enemy is far less merciful than humans ever were. The Admiral's appendages trembled with suppressed emotion. You overstep, Captain. She's right, interjected a new voice. Admiral Elizabeth Reyes had entered the command center, accompanied by Ambassador Lorne. The human admiral's presence immediately commanded attention, not through intimidation, but a quiet authority that Zora had come to respect. The Void Eaters adapt to our defensive measures within hours, Rice continued. If we don't adapt faster, we lose. My fleet is preparing to implement Operation Firebreak with or without coalition support. We would prefer coordination, but necessity dictates action." Ambassador Lorne stepped forward, her crystalline form refracting light in decision patterns. "The Thulax Enclave has voted to support Operation Firebreak. Our starlifters are being prepared for modification according to the human specifications." Vitrix's luminescence flashed with alarm. "Ambassador, the committee has not authorized." "The committee doesn't speak for individual member species in matters of existential threat," Lorne interrupted. "That provision has existed in coalition law since its founding."